Before we start sending requests, it's important to understand the anatomy of an HTTP request. Because a HTTP request is made up of a couple of core parts, which we'll all have a look at in this module here when it comes to configuring them when sending a request. The most important part about a request, of course, is the URL you're sending the request to. That's also called the API endpoint. And it is something like yourdomain.com/posts/1, for example. The exact path here, of course, depends on the API you're interacting with. However, when communicating with a RESTful API, it's not just about the URL, but also about the HTTP verb you're using. Something like post, get, put. This defines which kind of request you want to send to that endpoint. Do you want to store new data? Do you want to fetch data? Do you want to replace existing data? The HTTP verb makes that clear. But it always depends on the API you're working with, which endpoints and which verbs for these endpoints are available. So the official docs for the API is always the place to go, unless you're, of course, writing your own API, in which case you, of course, know which endpoint supports which operations. Now, when we're sending a request, it's nice to know where and how to send it to that place, but you often also need to set additional metadata, the so-called headers of a request. Now, these are kind of optional, or to be precise, some default headers will be appended to a request for you by the browser and by Angular, but you can also append your own headers, and that is therefore also something we'll have a look at. Now, last but not least, for some HTTP verbs, you can also add a body to your request. That's the core data that is attached to a request. For example, if you're sending a post request to create a new piece of data on the server, well, then of course you should attach the information about that piece of data to your request, and you would do that in the request body. Therefore, a request body can be set on post, put, and patch requests, which are requests that do alter data on the server by adding or replacing it. Now that's the general anatomy of a HTTP request. Let's now have a look at how Angular helps us with writing or with creating such requests, how we can work with them, how we can work with the response, and what else Angular has to offer.